Once the sidekick of Europe, now trying to run the plot, Italy's back on the geopolitical chessboard. Or is it? And what about Giorgia Meloni? She's not playing nice. From Africa to Brussels, she's rewriting what Italian power even means.
Yeah, for decades, Italy's foreign policy was just vibes, always in someone else's shadow. But now, there's a strategy, a story, and a whole lot of sovereign talk. Welcome back to the pod. Today we're breaking down the rebirth of Italian foreign policy, from Cold War dependency to Meloni's makeover diplomacy.
We're joined by recent IR graduates, just like us, but above all, a great mind. It is fun to be around, knowledgeable and professional, from the lands of arancine, beautiful seas and lands, tasty food, and a bit of mafia. Welcome, Michele.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The pleasure is ours. We'll have a quick history recap and then we'll leave the floor to you for a discussion. Sounds good?
It's
Great.
rhetorical, by the way. You don't have a choice.
Of course.
All right. Let's start with a very quick history speedrun. Italy's foreign policy was basically follow Washington, trust NATO, don't really rock the U-boat, and overall it was about stability over strategy.
So sorry to be interrupting you at this point. Just
Perfect.
a podcast. No, I think that's extremely interesting point and line of argument, which is I think historiographically the most sounding one accepted by everybody, mostly everybody in academia. But I have to say that I have a bit of a slight different interpretations of this one. I don't really think that the post-World War II Italian foreign policy was to follow Washington. The United States was much more of an independence, a waiting independence between the two countries. Most of the foreign policy initiatives of the Italian of the post-World War II Italy were actually autonomous, taking out of personal interests, and of course taking into consideration the United States, the United Kingdom, and France, but not just Washington. So yes, I think that's a good line of argument, but I have a bit of a slight interpretation of that.
And thanks for that. We always appreciate opening our minds on that. But in any case, as we were following our line, Italy was too busy rebuilding, too messy politically to act independent. And apart from some exceptions, every government lasted more or less like, what, 5 business days?
Basically, Italy's global role was, we argue, a bit more reactive. For example, Cold War containment, post-war recovery, and later balancing the EU integration with domestic chaos. And domestic chaos, by the way, also includes the rise of communism and socialism within Italy. And as we know, there were a lot of problems with it, but we'll get there later. There was no grand vision, just crisis management. Speaking about crisis management, there was a spicy moment back in '85, the Achille Lauro affair, which all Italians are proud of, by the way, when Craxi literally sent the Italian Carabinieri special forces to surround US troops at the Sigonella air base, basically saying this is our territory, this is our country, and we are sovereign.
The 2000s hit, Berlusconi vibes, energy ties with Russia, migration spikes, Libya's collapse.
And that's when you see the first sparks of what we call the Mediterranean activism, Italy wanting to lead, not just to observe. Again, Michele, please don't roast us. We can say what do you want later. And then we can jump to 2022 with Giorgia Meloni and Fratelli Italia winning the elections. Everyone expected a nationalist tantrum, maybe like a mini Trump moment. But plot twist, she turns into one of EU and NATO's most disciplined players.
Yeah, she's not ditching the West, she's doubling down. Hardcore support for Ukraine, solid Atlanticism, but with a nationalist twist. Italy first, still loyal to allies.
Imagine it like sovereign realism. Meloni is not anti-global. She's pro-Italy first in this global system. Her Mattei plan, for example, for Africa, is basically saying we can lead Europe's Africa game and make it sound moral too.
Right, pitching partnership instead of exploitation, but still protecting Italian interests. Migration control, energy security, new markets.
She's also kind of flipping the EU narrative. Less Brussels enemy and more Brussels battleground. This is a change from her propaganda campaign, which I think is very smart. She knows Italy's voice carries more than what it sounds.
That's the key. Meloni realized something previous leaders didn't. If you want to play big power politics as a middle power, you need to brand it. And she's selling Italy as a bridge between Europe and Africa.
Thing is, can she keep that up?
Right now she's got the momentum, but to sustain it, Italy needs real diplomatic muscle, not just slogans. Otherwise, it's the same old cycle. Ambition meets reality.
And that's a very, very concise, summarized version of Italian foreign policy history. But since we're more dedicated to contemporary politics, we're going to jump into the discussion of the foreign relations that Italy has. And this is where Michele jumps in. I think we can start local, then regional, and then we can go global. I think we can kick it off with, as we just mentioned, Italy and EU relations. Michele, the floor is yours. You can talk about the sovranisti, the pro-EU, migration, whatever you want.
Well, I have to say that Italy-EU relations actually adorned of various dimensions. Of course, we can have a look at migration policies, at party compositions, European party compositions, at political compositions between Euro activism and Euro skepticism, of course, so about sovereignism and pro-EU stances. What I have to look, I think, and even in contemporary phenomena, is a bit of a continuation of the Italian history, of the Italian foreign policy with respect to the European Union and the European institutions more generally. So, firstly, with respect to this point, I would say that Italy has always had, I would say, a whole set of objectives which have not changed too much since 1957, since the sign of the Rome Treaty, which basically it's increasing powers to the European Parliament, which is having a much more role inside of the European Commission. I would say not abandoning the stance, I mean, not abandoning the requirements of unanimity when it comes to CFSP, so common foreign and security policy, and even common foreign and defense policy. So I think that's what gives you a huge idea about which kind of which kind of foreign policy Italy is shaking out to. So with respect to Parliament, it's quite easy to understand. Italy has lots of structural problems, internal problems, and it has sort of a perception of not being treated to equally with respect to the other member states. So giving much more powers to European Parliament means giving much more power to members of the Parliament. And the members of the Parliament, which are all treated equally. So all countries inside of the Parliament are equal. One vote, one head, one vote. So giving much more power to the European Parliament means having Italy as a great power among the others, equally among the others. I would say that's a sort of a continuation of Italian foreign policy with respect to European institutions, um, the whole of its history, Republican history. A second point is about having much more lobbying, pitching for its interest inside of the European Commission when it comes to employment, to regional social funds. Indeed, most of the funds we do have, regional development funds, employment funds, all funds are actually taken, I would say, developed as initiative by the Italian government back in the 70s and the 80s. That's, I think, give you a bit of idea how Italy relates to the European institutions. With respect to sovranisti and so Euro skepticism and the opposite, I would say that is quite of an interesting point. My view is that after the global financial crisis, but even after the Cold War time, there's a bit of a resurgence of anti-system politics in the EU, what Giovanni Sartori called anti-system politics in the EU, and especially in the Eurozone, what commentators and journalists call populism. But anti-system politics is a bit much more a scientific approach to it. In this case, I would say that the anti-system parties developed an anti-system politics to gain consensus after the financial crisis and the sovereign debt crisis and run for office. And that's what basically happened after 2008 in mostly all the GIPS or PIGS countries and as well in Italy, of course. So with respect to the EU, so this is a bit of a sort of the panorama of Italian approach. And that happens as well with respect to migration. So Italy would like to change the Dublin rules, so how migrants are accepted, treated, so the burden sharing among member states. And I have to say there's quite of a similar stance with respect to Donald Trump day. So the Italian migration politics is a bit like what Trump is aspiring to do, but not exactly the same.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. I think I'd like to touch upon a topic which is Italy-NATO relations. You before you mentioned something like Italy is a big power among others, and I'd say that now we're engaging in that sense also in the field of defense, and this creates like a natural bridge with NATO. So, what do you think of like how Italy is having its relationship within NATO right now?
Well, I think it quite good. I mean, so one thing I would like to mention with respect to previous EU relations, but in the same way it connects to NATO, I think it was yesterday, Financial Times had an article which was Italy, no, Europe should follow Italy or it should imitate Italy, something of the kind. It was written by a Bocconi professor. That because Italy is at the moment probably the most stable government in Europe. So we know all of those, front lines of Times, of The Economist, of Politico, saying that Italian is one of the most stable countries at the moment in Europe. And that reflects, of course, when it comes to council decisions, council negotiations inside of NATO. When you have to decide on the 5% quota on the military projects and rearmament plans, of course, it's a bit of a balance of equilibrium. Of course, the most powerful actor in that case is the United States. But to be sit on the table and have, in a certain way, the same opinions and plans and forward-looking aspirations as the United States when it comes to Russia, when it comes to the eastern flank, and so on, it gives much more weight to your positions. And I think that's what's happening inside of NATO. To the Italian government, helping Ukraine ensure that Russia doesn't take all of Ukraine it's a national security interest. So the 5% quota, so a bit of a halving, the muscles we were talking about before. So increasing your defense spending, having a greater posture when it comes to military capacity is quite of an important thing instead for being a great power in the European continent list. So we are in a way, that's even my view, historiographically, that at the moment power politics is predominant. It's like in the 19th century. So when you have national interest and you pursue national interest, you achieve national interest, even through military objectives, even through military tools. That's what we're living in the European continent, and we were not used to do that. And in that case, Italy is in a way positioning itself quite good. Of course, it has not a great financial fiscal capacity to have no, it doesn't have a lot of maneuver from an economic standpoint when it comes to defense spending and so on. But I think that within NATO, Italy has a good stance, quite aligned to the various council members and even to with respect to the military command of Ammiraglio Ragone. So and even Italy is running lots of projects and within NATO, it's a leader in lots of projects in terms of maritime security and in terms of defense projects, even about aircraft building in space as well. There was this consortium created between Thales, Airbus, and Leonardo. So, I mean, MBDA, right, for missiles. So, I think we have a good industry. We are, I think, the 10th military power in the world. So, I think in NATO we have a good stance, both industrially and economically, and I would say politically.
Yeah, I think you mentioned something really cool and well, interesting. The term power politics. We all know Trump is pushing real hard with his policies, especially with tariffs. And I wanted to hear your opinion on the Italy-US relations. Is and also if you can more specifically individually between Meloni and Trump. Do you think it's all talk and all like, yeah, you're great, yeah, you're awesome, but in reality, nothing really changed? Because I saw this criticism a lot about Meloni having a great relationship with Trump, but in practice, there's still the tariffs.
Well, I would say that personal relationships in diplomacy and international politics do matter a lot. It's contrary to common opinions, but when you have good relationships with a leader, that gives you much more space when it comes even to negotiating certain issues, even to have legitimacy in international fora and in domestic fora. So I would say when it comes to personal relationships, at a very good point, United States and Italy, I mean, good relations and so on. I would say that the Italy-US relationships are culturally solid, and that I mean they're grounded on sort of a shared past, same values, and since the I would say even after the after the Second World War. So I would say that the Italian-US relationship is not much, as I was telling you before, is not something about of a subordination, much more of an interdependence. Um, of course, when it comes to tariffs, when it comes to national interests of Trump, of the United States, they might be colliding with national interests of Italy. But I think, again, when you have good relationships, personal relationships, that may help in, I would say, smoothing a bit the angles of tariffs and with respect to certain sectors and certain goods or services. So I would say that Italian-United States relationships are quite good at the moment. Of course, to have some problems, breaks when it comes to tariffs, when it comes to trade policy, but overall, I would say they're kind of aligned. Of course, to have a bit of, I wouldn't talk even this when it comes to Ukraine and Russian issue. I wouldn't talk of a sort of United States withdrawal from the European continent, from the European issues. I would much more talk of United States special unilateralism, where they do not have the same interest they used to have in the European balance. They would like to give much more independence to the European Union, to European countries. And I would say that's a good point. I mean, that's a good chance for the European Union to be much more independent, even when it comes to defense, but even when it comes to politics and international legitimacy. You know, Italy, the European Union would like to be a global power, but always attached to the United States. So if you want to be a global power, you have to be a little bit independent in the major I would say dimensions. So economics, industrial, and military. Overall, I would say Italian-US relationships are sound. Again, I've been sort of the United States Embassy in the political section, and I would essentially not talk of a subordination. They run classic negotiations, and when Italy has its own national interests, it gives no, second best options. Same for the United States. Classic two countries bilateral relationships, culturally very solid and very close.
Thanks a lot for this take. And now I want to come back to the Mediterranean, and we know that also Italy is playing a key role, as we said before, in bridging Europe and Africa. And this is also crucial for our own energy supply chain and also to control migration. I want to know your take on this relationship Meloni is building with African and MENA countries.
I think a good one. You mentioned the Mattei plan. Well, the main logic behind the Mattei plan is the same logic Mattei used to have in the back in the second half of the last century, which is treating partners equally. So you don't have to explore natural resources from Africa, from the MENA region, to get you to become richer and let them being poorer. So that's a bit the logic of the Mattei plan, and that's what Africans do appreciate of the Mattei plan. So you try to treat you equally. We don't want you rare earth. We don't know your first materials to be imported into Italy, so we process them and we sell you processed goods. It's a bit of a second way of second colonialism 2.0. No, the Italian way is to help them develop their own industrial sectors, their own capacity, skills, and abilities to produce, even in terms of R&D, of educations, and the rest. So I would say from this standpoint, so even if you look at the debate of the Afro-Italia conference, the Afro-Italian conference in the Italian Senate, I mean, there was like, I don't know, 60, 50% of the earth soil represented inside of the Italian Senate. So all treated equally, so all in pairs, you're inside of the Italian parliament. So symbolically, it gives you even this idea of equal treatment, of equal stand. And so I think that's what is really interesting and rewarding to the African partners. When it comes to migration, that a bit relates even to my take plan. So trying to stop migrations, illegal migrations, because we're trying to develop their own industries and employment opportunities in their own countries of origin. When it comes to Palestine and Israel, well, the Italian Republic has had historic stances in favor of two-state solutions. Of course, we know that. Especially after the 1967, 1970, 1973 wars. In that case, we used even to have a bit of a greater effort towards the Palestinian issue. But of course, we cannot deny the right of Israel to exist because of the Holocaust, because they're a sovereign nation, because from an international law perspective, they are a state. There cannot be a debillatio of Israel, I mean, from an international legal standpoint. So, of course, the two-state solution is essential. But, of course, the problem is terrorism, is Hamas. The possibility for terrorist activities to happen inside of the European and Italian soil. So we have to a bit of, try to bridge between diplomacy and security, national security in a way, of both of Italians in Italy and Italians in the MENA region. With respect to energy supplies, well, we're trying to get much more supplies to redirect our supplies from Russia to Azerbaijan to Algeria, through various channels from Turkey. So we're trying to get as much we can of energy from them. We have good resources. I mean, we have good energy stocks in Italy of Italian energy. But of course, we have to take because of the consumer of energy is increasing with artificial intelligence, technological development, and so on. We have to take much more energy, and we need, we have to diversify our energy supplies, and we have to invest even in other forms of energy transmission and formation. So with nuclear energy, hydrogen, and so on. But again, all of these topics, MENA regions, African countries to have a central role, because we understood that in the European continent we have lots of problems with these issues, with respect to Russia and other countries, and so we have to look back to other partners and diversify, right? So it's a bit of a resurgence of national interests, and so we're looking at these countries.
I think that's a really nice take with your geopolitical analysis, which is more about interest and realpolitik instead of like right or wrong. Let's do a little thing. I'll ask you quick questions, and you can give me straightforward answers, like 1, 2 sentences. What do you think?
Yeah, let's try.
Okay. Do you think Italy is actually more respected, or it's all fuffa, as we say in Italian?
Should I say yes, maybe or not, or yes or not?
Like yes, no, maybe, and then give a 1, 2 sentence answer or explanation.
Okay. So yes, I would say yes, more respected. Italy has always been respected because Italy is not Meloni, but its industry, its culture, its arts, its people, and so on. But yes, Italy is sitting in much of the tables, much of the negotiations. And as one former diplomat used to say, when you're sitting on the table, you're not on the menu. When you're not sitting on the table, you are on the menu. So even if Italy is sitting on the table, it's not having any role at least, it's not on the menu. So that's a good one.
Do we weigh more geopolitically in terms of economy, in terms of military, or even soft power? I know this is a big question, but try to be straight to the point.
Well, yes, when it comes to soft power, Meloni, the stability which gives Governo Meloni, it's a great point. So countries perceive Italy as a stable countries with full potentials. So yes, it weighs more, not just geopolitically, but from an international relations perspective more generally.
Okay, and then very last thing, give a rating to Meloni's only just the foreign policy.
So it's out of 10, out of what?
Out of 10.
I would say a good 8, 8.5, 9. Yes, it's a good mark. She's Atlanticist. I would say a new Atlanticism, but Atlanticist. She's pro-European Union. She has good the Italian national interests, and I think she's made good investments both in foreign policy and domestic policy. So I would say yes, 8 or 9 out of 10.
So maybe the rebirth isn't about dominance, it's about identity. Italy's finally figured out what it wants to be in the world.
Yeah, not a pawn, not a power, but a player that matters. Giorgia Meloni didn't reinvent Italian foreign policy, she just gave it a backbone.
Thanks for tuning in, ragazzi. Don't forget to hit follow and drop your take. Is Italy becoming Europe's comeback kid or just another headline moment?
Stay informed, stay engaged.
Peace till next time.